what I wanted to do is we have module F, and so we have, actually this is a final exam, an actual final exam from summer 2016. As with stock market, previous performance is not guarantee of future performance, right? This is kind of an idea of what the final would look like. It's not. This is not the final exam. You shouldn't assume that there will always be 6 questions or that there will always be a question about this or a question about that, right? It's just to give you an idea. It's not. So let's try it. Number 1, write a function called max3 that takes 3 ints and returns an int, the largest of the 3 ints. Notice this should still work if there's a type for max. You can return any int in that case. Get a pen, start writing. Or a laptop. Start writing stuff. Hopefully by now this should be automatic, right? Should take you about 30 seconds. Okay. Are you guys done? Close enough to done? Cool. And who's gonna come do it? Yeah.
Yeah, sure, but let's
You don't
see.
have to do it right, as long as
Yeah.
you're doing it. Let's just do it.
Is heading mandatory?
No.
Optional?
Oops. How do we?
Yeah. The name is max3, not max, but that's okay.
Oh, yeah. Max3.
That should be automatic, right? You should be, without even thinking, right? It takes 3 ints, so you declare those things, it returns an int. Public and static is not mandatory in this context. Since we're going to test the program, I'm typing it. But
You don't need it full.
You could, in this function, there is no scanner, right? You're getting the.
I think we will.
You're getting the parameters. There is no
I'll tell you
scanner.
why.
You shouldn't have to use it. There is.
Yeah.
Two ends.
If you write it with scanner, it is wrong. What the spec is telling you is that the function takes 3 arguments, n1, n2, and n3, right? And returns the max of those 3. I will tell you something like this from the user that, yeah. Probably 1 double ampersand rather than 1 ampersand. It would still work. Probably 1, 2.
Or like 1 and then 3.
No. And rather than and.
Oh yeah.
Same above. Yeah. The single ampersand does beat and, which probably still work. I don't know if Java would complain or not. In C++ would still work and would work the same way if you want the Boolean end. That's what we did. This sounds
You good?
probably, yeah. Thanks.
Can we do int max equals n1 and then you come
There's many different ways you could do this, right? Yes, one is, this is one, right? And we are not testing this stuff, right? So don't believe it. We can actually do this, right? System.out.println. That should work, right? So we should get 3 on all 3 cases, right?
No, I understand that we're using equal for n1 and n3. What about when you're comparing n1 and n2? You still need. Yes.
Yeah, you need greater than or equal, because if not, when they are equal, you may do the else.
That's what I'm saying.
Now, an even easier way is this, and by now, right, this should be coming naturally to you guys, but that's max 2, right? And then max 3 let me call it max 3b. Actually, let me call this one max 3a. So that when we run it, we run this one. Why do we return here? Since we have max 2. Right? This to me is kind of the most obvious way. The other way, which I think is what,
is max equals n1.
which is basically a for loop but unrolled, right? So let me call this B. What Miriam was saying, right? I remembered your name. That's good. Sorry. There's somebody there is some other name that gets mixed in my head. Your last name, I tend to think of it as the first name rather than the last name. So it is basically a for loop, right? So you do int max equals n1, and then if n2 greater than or equal to max, you do max n2, right? Is this what you were suggesting? And then the same with n3.
Why do you put greater equal?
In this case, it doesn't matter. This would be basically, you're doing a for loop, except that you are unrolling the for loop. Right? If this was an array and you were doing it with a for loop, this is what the for loop would do. So that's also. There's probably other ways, but nobody came up with a different one. We'll leave it like this. Let's just make sure that it actually works. Keep in mind, this is code that's being done on the screen. It's not necessarily highly tested or anything like that. There may still be bugs, but. Now, let's change to this. Write code to create a variable m1 which contains a hash map from string to integer and put the key high associated with the value 10. Maps, right? You should know how to use maps.
How many classes are there in the library?
How many classes are there in the Java library? God, an obscene amount. I have no clue. Probably closer to 1,000 than to 100, but hopefully less than 1,000. Let me do this. You don't need to do this, right? I'm doing this because I want to have valid code. So how do we create a variable m1 of type hash map of string to integer?
Create an object from
Hash map, right? String integer. M1, right? Equals new hash map, and then M1 dot put I right? Simple stuff. Next one. Given the interface iProduct on the last page, create a class laptop computer that implements said interface. Define fields as convenient. The laptop computer constructor takes two parameters, one for name and one for price. And the isCheap method returns true if the price is less than 300, false otherwise. Let me cut and paste this here so we can do. Yeah. Oh well. Interface iProduct. Sometimes cut and pasting sucks. So you need to, given that interface, create a class, right? The class is called laptop computer, implements that interface, takes two parameters, one for name, one for price, and isCheap returns true if the price is less than 300 and false otherwise.
We need to do another method for name and price.
Is name a method?
There is constructor too.
You need the constructor, but you also need this method, set name and get name, set price and get price. So you would need fields for name and price, probably. But sorry?
I didn't get your.
You define fields as you need, as it is convenient for you. I'm not telling you which fields the class has, because I'm giving you an interface, right? So you define the fields as you need it, as it is convenient for you, as convenient.
So you mean that we don't need instance variables?
Fields is another name for instance variables. You define instance variables as you need. That's what, right? Define fields as convenient is my way.
It's not.
If you don't need it, no, right? Can you do this stuff without defining fields? Right? I think you need to do it on the computer, Tala. Come. Yes. That is why you need to do it. It will stick. Yes, go do it. That will make you remember. That will make you remember for the final. So how do you define a class?
Last laptop computer.
Yeah.
What, really?
Laptop computer.
Yeah.
Okay. Static, you need
Yeah,
static?
static will do. But it's not right for the exam or something like that. It's something that, yeah.
Okay.
Laptop
Okay.
computer.
Oh.
No. No, static is an artifact of the fact that we are defining it in one file. In real life, you would never make it static. You define it in its own file. Right? It's just.
Okay.
You need to. Yeah. How do you specify that you implement an interface?
Implement?
But it's not parentheses.
Oh, okay. So now implement iProduct. And now we need parentheses, right?
No parentheses, braces.
Oh, okay.
Those guys.
Sorry. Yeah, those.
Yeah. Just tap enter.
Inside.
So I need to
Tap enter so that you get space. This guy. This guy. Sorry. Ah.
why is this problem?
Sorry. My God. Oh, what?
No, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Right. So
So
you need to define a constructor that takes two parameters. Well, what fields or instance variables are we gonna have?
Name and price.
again, laptop computer should be the
That's
same.
for the constructor, yes. Yeah. Either way.
Get price and each can.
No, laptop computer,
Oh,
right?
set.
And you're getting is a constructor, so it takes two parameters, the name and the price.
I should say int and the. Okay. I use same names, okay? No?
Let me try. Sorry. You define the parameters. This is a normal function, right? This is a normal method. String name double price. Now we probably want to define here private string name. Right, this is my constructor. And then I'm gonna cut and paste all this stuff. What do we do in set name? Okay, right, so this would be setting the name field. This would be return name. Set price. What do we do for is cheap?
Price is less than 300.
Less than
return.
300.
And that's it, right? Reasonably it. Sorry? You can. You don't have to. It is great if you put it.
You don't have
Nope, you don't have to. Why do we put override? Because if we don't, right? If we don't, the compiler is going to let us know that we're doing something dumb.
Yeah, those green ones mean that it's overwriting. Right?
Yeah, that's coming from the interface and it's telling me you can go there. That's as far as the IDE is concerned. But the thing is, if I put override on something that is not an override, the compiler will signal an error. It's always a good idea to have the compiler look out for you, right? You don't need to. It is great if you put it. You don't have to. This stuff should be natural for you guys, right? If it's not anymore, go do 500 of this, right? You should be able to define classes that implement interfaces and things like that without thinking, right? Should be about as simple as Max 3 by now. If it isn't, then go define 500. Sorry?
After C days. C days is on Thursday.
C days? What's that?
The presentation
For another class?
for the presentation for the whole computer science.
Oh. No. Wait. No. No. I completely understand that there is other stuff. But let me tell you something. I'm not trying to be mean or anything like that. I completely understand there's other stuff, but by now this stuff should be natural, right? This stuff should be stuff that there is no way that you can forget. This stuff, hopefully, right? And if it's not, then that means that you need to do a million more. This stuff should be stuff that when you are 75 in an old people's home, you still can do it. It should be stuff that, right, even Alzheimer cannot take from you. It should be natural. It should be like adding and multiplying. It shouldn't be special. Given your laptop computer class above, write to code to create a variable P1 of type laptop computer and assign it to a new laptop computer named My Brand Super Cheap and with a cost of $250. How do we create a variable called P1 of type laptop computer? You declare variables the same way, right? Type, name, and so how do we create a new laptop computer named My Brand Super Cheap? And the way we define the constructor, it takes name and price, so makes sense. Cool. Write a function remove cheap product that takes a list of iProduct and returns another list of iProduct. The return value contains all the products in the parameter that are not cheap products. The original list should not be modified. what do we return?
A list of items.
And what do you take as parameter?
Another list.
Another list of iProduct, right? Horrible thing! Don't autocomplete horrible things that I don't want. God! Apple Z. Die. Beautiful. Oh, I need an actual thing, right? Release the file. And then what do I do?
For each.
Sorry?
For each loop.
Mm-hmm. If it's not cheap, then what do I do with it? Add it to the list of non-cheap products, right? When I'm done, return non-cheap products, right? Sorry. And then write a function highest price product that takes an array of price product and returns a double the highest price of any product. You can assume that the let me actually change it a little bit. If the list array, sorry, it's an array, not a list, right? And you return a double, right? What do we do? If the array is empty, how do we know if the array is empty? I need to give it a name, right?
Products.name.
Drop something. Now I know that it's not empty, so how do I get the max? How do I get the highest price product? For loop, right? Start with products of 0.getPrice.
you start with 1?
Because I started setting it to 0, right? I already know what's going to happen when I look at 0. You could start with 0, it's perfectly okay, there's no problem. In fact, if you start with 0, you can do a for each loop rather than a for loop. This kind of tells you an idea, right? What could be there. Chances are there will be interfaces, inheritance, classes, right? And then lists and maps and those things. The only thing that I didn't include in this exam as an oversight is recursion. You should assume that there will be a recursion question. It's not. Again, it's not a promise, right? But
And we don't need try here?
you need try if you're catching an exception. If you're throwing it, you don't need try, right? In this case, it would make sense. If you were calling this thing, then you would use a try, maybe. Any questions? Any answers? No. This sounds reasonable. Do we want to cover something specific? Do we want to review something specific? Do you have any questions about anything?
The second one, can we do the second one?
What do you mean? Can we do this with the for each loop or?
There is another one.
Oh, yeah, not a bad idea. It's probably the same thing, but let's try it.
So we will have recursion as well?
It is part, right? The final is comprehensive. You could have everything. And so there's a decent chance. In
I
fact,
only have 2 here. So one is for online, one is in class.
like when I did this, it's something like that. Yeah.
So instead you gave them the if statements, but you will give us maybe recursion, right? From the first one.
It's not necessarily right. I mean, I kind of go over what we covered and covered stuff, so it's not. But yeah, we can probably do this quickly. Let me do this and then download it. Write Java code to create a Boolean variable called am I smart and assign it the value true. I'm not going to do that one, sorry. But we can do this one. Write a function called is odd or greater than 10 that takes an int and returns a Boolean, returns true if the number is odd or greater than 10, and false otherwise. What do we do? What do we return? How do we check if the number is odd?
Modulo 2 is equal to 1. And
Or-
greater than 10.
Right? Fizzbuzz, we have it there, right? We have it in one of the assignments, so let me skip this one and do this. Given the interface iStudent on the last page, create a class student, implement same interface, define fields as convenient. Student constructor takes 2 parameters, one for name and one for GPA. So let's do this. Static interface iStudent, set name. So given this, create a class student that implements a set interface, and you have a constructor, right? Static class student. How do I say that it implements a student? Why is this doing horrible things? Probably because no. Yeah. What fields do I need? Sorry? They're not global variables. They are instance variables. It's very different. Yes, global variables are variables that are available everywhere. Instance variables. It's variables that belong to each instance, right? Probably want to do private. Oh well. Sorry?
Do we have to have methods get GPA and get name because the constructor already provides us with these two? So we have to have those two functions.
This guy is telling you that yes, you do.
I mean, if you don't have them, nothing's gonna happen in
If-
the interface.
What do you mean? If you don't have them, no, you did not implement the interface. The program doesn't compile.
If the interface does not have get name and get GPA, we have in another class, we can access to them because of the constructor.
Actually, the constructor basically gives you set name and set GPA. Doesn't give you getters, right? Gives you setters ish. If you don't have setters, then the class is immutable. You create the instance, and once you do that, you can never change it, which is not quite the same.
So you cannot access to them if you don't have the get GPA and
Unless you make them public here, right? If you make them private, then no, you cannot access them, right?
even with the constructor you cannot.
The constructor will initialize those variables, but then after that, you cannot do anything to them, right? So that depends on what you mean by accessing, right? The constructor accesses them. Other methods may access them, but the clients of the class would not be able to. You normally have at least getters for most of your stuff.
So even if the interface doesn't have getters, you have to make your own.
No, if the interface, that depends of what you have to, right? Let's talk about different levels of having to, right? For the purposes of the exam, whatever the interface does, you have to. Whatever the question asks, you have to, right?
In general?
Whatever is not there, you don't have to. In general, 99.999999999% of the time, you want to have getters, right? Because if not, why the heck are you storing the variable if you cannot get it out? Now, sometimes you don't want to have the same things, right? Like, for example, instead of let's change the question, right? Public void add grade double G, right? Imagine that this is my interface, right? What do I need to store to be able to get the GPA? You're going to be adding grades, right? And I'm going to give you the GPA. What do I need to store?
Get the GPA.
Get GPA is a method. What data do I need to store? to be able to calculate that GPA, to be able to implement that method. You're not going to give me the GPA, you're going to give me grades, and then I need to calculate the GPA. So what do I need to store?
Variable.
What variable? What type? What kind of
Double.
stuff?
Double.
A double, what double?
Double GPA.
Can I just do it with this? What happens when you do add grade? I need either an array of grades, right? Or
List.
an array or a list or something like that of grades. Or if I don't need, I just need to get the GPA, what can I do? Well, keep the sum and the number of elements, right? So instead of having this, I could have private int num grades. Then I would have public void add grade. What does this do? How do I add a grade? Right? Sum of grades plus equals G, right? Probably want to initialize to 0. And then I could have public for double right?
That's average.
Sorry?
Isn't that average?
Yes. That's the GPA. GPA is grade point average. And I still need to do get name. This makes sense. In this case, you have a getter for name and a getter for GPA and a slightly different thing. So there's not necessarily you have getters for every field, right? But normally you have some functions that use those fields. If not, why the heck you're storing them? In most of the simple examples, you get things for the exact same fields. But does this idea make sense? And so I cheated, just so you know. Question 5, Q5. How do I create a student?
Student has 1,
Let's assume that I would normally pass the GPA, but I just made this guy different. So this would do it. Actually different if you're solving the question on the exam, but we just modified it. So let me do it so it's still self-consistent, right? Write a function average GPA that takes an array of I students, returns double the average GPA of the students, returns 0 if the array is empty. You take an array, so what do? Double static double average GPA. What do we take? An array of iStudent. Right? By now, you should be able to calculate the average in your sleep, right? We did it like 700 times in the class, right? Write a function valedictorian that takes a list of iStudents and returns an iStudent, the student with the highest GPA. I'm taking a list, right? And it is basically this thing, right? Very close to this thing. So if it's empty, I'm going to return null instead of students.isEmpty. Otherwise, I can do iStudent best or something like that equals students.get 0. Actually, yeah. I will try to find if I have more exams and I'll post them just to give you guys more stuff to practice. But you kind of know what to expect. And you should know where you stand, right? I mean, this stuff should be kind of automatic. If it's not, then there is trouble. I tried to make it so that the questions are relatively straightforward. You don't try to make them so that they're not tricky or anything like that. But whether I achieve it or not is different, right? Sometimes you may think that something is tricky. Yeah. Any questions?
On review, I see there is exceptions in the last.
Yes.
One.
Yes, you need to know exceptions, right? That's the last assignment. We just did an example here.
No.
In the review.
Yes.
Could you switch the review?
Yeah, but we did an example here that threw an exception, something threw an exception. We modified one of the questions, right? So that you throw an exception.
Now she means that review is harder
I know.
than this one.
Well, right? The way that I see it, right, I have a million things that I could ask, right? Which ones do I get to ask? Well,
Yeah, 7, 8, 9. 8 and 9.
Yes. Yes, so, yeah. You should know how to throw exceptions and catch them and do things like that, right? Actually, 6, right? 6 requires you to do try and stuff like that. Let's do this one just for fun, right? Just to show that kind of stuff. Um, so the integer class in Java has a parseInt, right? That takes a string and returns an int, but it throws number format exception, right? So here you need to define another function called parseInt. Takes 2 arguments, a string and an int, and returns an int. Int parseInt takes string and default value, right? So you try to parse it, and if that thing throws an exception, you return the default, right? So you do try return integer parseInt of s, right? If something went wrong, return if you want to be nicer, we should do this, right? What topics are still hard in your mind? What would you rather? If you guys don't mind, we can review more stuff on Wednesday and maybe skip Monday, the last class, rather than do more examples, right? What would you rather we kind of do more examples of on Wednesday?
If we have a problem for final, so how we can ask you?
What do you mean?
If we studied and we have problems, so can we ask you by email? Or
Never. You guys don't have my email, nor my cell phone, nor anything. Ask me through any of the 700 ways. Yeah, of course. Contact me. Yes, you have my cell phone. You have my email. You have my other email. For some reason, I could never set up my phone to, or I did set up my old phone, but I never set up my new phone to check KSU's email. So my Gmail account beeps on my phone. So I tend to occasionally forget to check my KSU email for like 2 or 3 days. So if you don't see an answer, send it to my Gmail. But yeah, absolutely.
Can we do more examples for the questions 7, 8, and 9 of the review?
Okay. Why don't you try them and ask questions? Now we're done.
No, for the next.
Next. Yes, we could, but I would rather you guys actually try them. Which is the right? I mean, that's the point. Try them. If I do the examples, then that's not gonna help you. Remember, this is a contact sport. You have to try. You can actually post on if you're not sure whether you got the right answer or something like that. You can post on the D2L or something.
No, you said what we could do next.
Yeah, yeah. I'll eventually post this. This